Dan Rubenstein, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me.
My great and good friend. How you doing this fine day?
I'm not bad. I caught up on a lot of bowl stuff. I got some exercise this morning. I've got a good amount of energy. We've got semifinals coming up as we record this January 8th. So maybe you're listening to this after. And so I'm going to be on the record saying, wow, Notre Dame just annihilated Penn State. Right, guys? Oh, I have no idea. But no, life is good. How are you?
I am doing well. As you said, it is Wednesday. We're recording this the day before the first of two college football playoff semifinal games. Go back and listen to our Tuesday episode where we previewed, I would say comprehensively, both of them.
Great.
At least to the extent that we can here. So go back and listen if you want to be fully up to date on what's going to transpire in the Orange and Cotton Bowls, or at least what we think is going to happen. Today's episode, though, we're going to take a knee.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to give ourselves an opportunity to go back through some of the non-playoff bowl games. There were many, dozens, literally dozens of other games that we have not paid any attention to. We talked about a number of them before bowl season, but with all the playoffs and everything going on right now with coaching changes and signing days and portals and whatnot, we just have not had an opportunity to go back through. All of those games have been played. All the non-playoff bowl games have been played. We just have the three playoff games that are remaining at time of recording. So you and I both went through separately, took a whole bunch of notes on points of intrigue.
Yes.
Throughout bowl season. What we're not going to do here is go for like an hour and a half and recap every single game in painstaking detail. We're not doing that.
But what we will do is say congratulations to your national champion, North Dakota State, fighting Bison.
That's right, baby. They're back.
They're back.
At long last, they're back
to
their winning ways.
Hey, real quick, it'd be great if you could consider subscribing to the YouTube channel down below. It really helps us out.
We're going to talk through the points of intrigue that you and I found as we were going back through. And, kind of like we did with our previews, right? We're just going to find the points of intrigue and call them out for the verballerhood. There will be things that we missed. If there are, hit us up as always, solidverbal@gmail.com or any of our social channels.
Yeah.
The only reminder that I would offer, and then I promise I'll shut up. I've already talked too much. We are doing back-to-back live streams for the college football playoff semifinals.
So you're probably out there saying to yourself, how do I get 7+ hours of live Hildenbrandt?
That's exactly right.
Buddy, do I have great news? Are we doing like a double recap after the Texas-Ohio State game?
We have not figured out what we're doing yet, actually.
I'm okay with it.
I don't know what the move is. Do we do a recap after Notre Dame and then a recap after Ohio State, Texas? Do we group them together after Ohio State, Texas?
Well, I'll quote the great, I think late Tom Shales, TV reviewer at the Washington Post. And I quote, "You can never have enough Ty Hildenbrandt." So that was the full review of the Solid Verbal, which I both appreciate and took, a little bit of insult to. Okay, so where do you want to start? Do you want to start themes? Do you want to start specifics? Do you want to start players? Do you want to start narratives? Do you want to conference records? I'll go wherever you want.
I want to start with our favorite sound.
Okay.
The barge with the bulls is here. All aboard.
Let's hop aboard the bull barge, Dan.
Let's do it.
Let's make our way slowly down this lazy river of college football postseason action. I do want to start with general themes from bowl season.
Okay.
On our bonus episode that we did last week, which people can get out at verballers.com. You can also get ad-free episodes and other things, Discord access to the game. By the way, Bowl Bingo is still going on out at verballers.com, or if you want a more direct pathway in, just go to playbowlbingo.com. At time of recording, you probably are a little bit late. You might have a couple hours to get in for this week's game, but there is one more that's going to be dropping on Monday before the national championship. So go and check that out. On that bonus episode, we talked about, I guess, your now developing theory that more bowl games need a snack sponsor that's creative, just to inject some life back into bowl season, right?
Yes. An angle, something that...
A hook, something.
Right. The good people at Pop-Tarts, Duke's Mayo, look, the football, you come for the football, but you get the TV show, you get the full well-rounded experience when there's something that pops perhaps online or on SportsCenter or something that reminds you oh, this might be a fun thing to pay attention to next year, and then they got you.
Yeah. So one of the big themes for me is that there are some sponsors, some bowl games, assuming they're working together to some extent, right?
Mm-hmm.
That there are some that are trying to push the limits and make it more of like an entertainment product. The Tarts Bowl, the Duke's Mayo Bowl, I think that goes without saying that they're kind of trendsetters in this space.
Right.
We also saw the Cheez-It Bowl. Did you see the Cheez-It mascot officiated at a wedding at the end of the first half? Did you see this?
I did not. Great.
Yeah, there was a couple that apparently won some sort of sweepstakes.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was their wish or one that was offered up by Cheez-It, but the specific wish was called a 2-minute marriage.
Mm-hmm.
They did it at the 2-minute warning at the end of the first half. They got married on the field, officiated by the Cheez-It Bowl mascot. So there was that.
I can tell you this, Ty. I can tell you this, and you can agree, disagree. As somebody who has been married happily now for, oh my God, how many years? 2025? This will be 8 years.
Don't date yourself. Don't date yourself. It's been a while.
But as somebody who at least helped plan a wedding, if somebody came to you and said, look, we're going to have some sort of goof wedding, but you have to handle none of the logistics, you'd be like,
Where do I sign? Where do I sign?
What? Is it a Triscuit? Is it a Cheez-It? Whatever. Fine.
I know it doesn't matter. In a second.
Is it a multi-grain wheat
I would do that.
Okay.
Doesn't matter.
No.
Does not matter. I would do that in a millisecond.
Exactly right.
And when I was going through these notes, I showed this to Solid Wife Kate. She's like, I'd sign up for that in a heartbeat.
Yes.
So let the first theme of this bowl season be that if you are out there, if you're thinking of tying the knot, if you're in the throes of planning a wedding, if you can be married by a bowl mascot on the cheap, do it tomorrow.
I agree.
Do it tomorrow. Go to Cheez-It. Maybe they'll do it. Maybe they'll do it separate from the game for you.
I fully agree.
Other themes that came to mind as you were looking through all these games.
Sure. So we had, I think, 2 attempted 2-point conversions to win it on the spot, and it didn't work out. I think most notably Oklahoma against Navy.
That's right.
Very little in the way of defense, but in certain cases, very little in the way of offense. There were a lot of like, hey, they didn't score for 3 quarters. Or in the case, I think it was also Fresno scored 13, I want to say, in the first quarter, and then went 3 scoreless quarters, but held on to at least send it to overtime before eventually losing in the famous Idaho Potato Bowl.
By the way, speaking of that,
please.
I thought this is where you were going to go with your 2-point conversion thing, because that game went to double overtime, and NIU won it on consecutive gadget plays.
Yes. It was Josh Holst, the freshman quarterback.
I believe he caught
he caught a 2-point conversion.
He caught the 2-point conversion. It was George Demopoulos.
Yeah, good name.
The freshman wide receiver. He took kind of an end around on the first touchdown in overtime, threw it front pylon, and then on the ensuing 2-point conversion attempt, took a pitch, again, running from left to right, and I think threw it, as you said, to the quarterback. So that's how they won 28-20 in double overtime. They dumped the Idaho Potatoes on it. It was pretty cool.
Should be mentioned, no Mikey Keene, who is, I believe, transferring to Michigan. Also, Fresno State themselves made a coaching change. So they were in transition. So this is not a referendum on the state of Fresno State football necessarily, but an entertaining game nonetheless. We had a bunch of overtime games, right? We had and a bunch of shootout type situations between Kansas State Rutgers and USF San Jose State. I'm leaving out a ton, but there were a bunch of, I watched all of In the Moment because I think both of my kids were asleep and my wife was asleep early in Mexico. And I think Syracuse scored 35 in the first half. It was 21-14 almost immediately. I believe that was Holiday Bowl.
Yeah, the Syracuse game was something else. So Kyle McCord set records.
Yes.
With what he did in this game. Kyle McCord, I believe, becomes the ACC's record holder for single season passing yardage. He threw for 453 and 5 touchdowns against Wazoo in the Holiday Bowl, as he said, broke Deshaun Watson's record.
Yeah.
Not to be overlooked, the fact that the Franimal won 10 games in his first season.
He doesn't have to wait all year long to shower, right?
He can shower all off season long if he wants with 10 wins. That was a pretty good campaign. And you mentioned the overtime thing.
Yeah.
The overtime thing was actually quite funny because the Hawaii Bowl, I believe on Christmas Eve, between USF and San Jose State went to 5 overtimes, and USF won that game. And then 48 hours later, the Game Above Sports Bowl, I still don't know what Game Above does.
Nobody does.
Beside the point. 48 hours later, Pitt and Toledo play, and they break that record by going to 6 overtimes to settle their score. Toledo won that one 48-46. So the first game, the Hawaii Bowl on Christmas Eve, sets a bowl record for most overtimes, and then that is subsequently broken 48 hours later by Pitt and Toledo.
Yes.
Kind of crazy.
That was a wild game. So that was a Pitt game with no Eli Holstein or Nate Yarnell, should be noted. Again,
Correct.
like this is your blanket disclaimer that like, hey, key players and or coaches were missing, and we just enjoyed these as TV shows. Hopefully that we're going down to the wire, and that's okay. That's okay this time of year. I also wanted to mention, because I've written down, remember when we had the conversation, I don't know if this was a fantasy thing where I was like, I want a forfer. I want a quarterback who throws for 4 touchdowns in a game and separately in a different game throws for 4 interceptions. Kyle McCord with 5 touchdowns against Wazoo had a 5-fer this year. A 5-touchdown game and a 5-pick game. I believe it was against Pitt on a Thursday night. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
So that sort of brings both of those two thoughts together. So yes, a big one was just a lot of offense, a lot of games coming down to it, a lot of 2-point conversion, gadgety plays, a lot of just stupid, huge stats for players. You know, like Taylen Green against Texas Tech just fully went off, and that was cool to see because the best of Taylen Green this year for Arkansas was certainly crazy entertaining and efficient. That seemed to be the theme for me. I want to make it personal one more time, if I may, Ty.
Oh, please.
So I'm out in Mexico between like the 22nd and 29th, and I'm at like a family friend's house, and there was a family that we had never met, and they found out what I did for a living, and they said, weird random question, do you think Seth Hennigan can get drafted? And I said, yeah, probably. Like, if he's a good guy and can learn a playbook, he's thrown for a ton of yardage, and if he's a good locker room guy, yeah, he could be like a long-term backup, or maybe he catches on with the right team and has some success. I don't know. Why not? Like, you look at like who's in the NFL right now. Why am I going to tell you Seth Hennigan can't? And they're like, funny story, we were in Hawaii 4 years ago, and Memphis was in Hawaii. The game gets canceled for COVID, and he did a full photo shoot in his uniform on the beach, and we started talking to him. And so we're super happy that he's successful. And I was like, you know what? Seth Hennigan, 4-year starter, broke Brady White's records at Memphis, goes out on top, has another strong year. They end up losing to Navy and UTSA this year, but get to 11 wins. And I just want to tip my cap to a little bit of like a rarity in this sport. A 4-year starting quarterback who, by all accounts, has just been like an exemplary leader for Memphis and ends successfully. So how about that?
Were they impressed that you immediately knew who Seth Hennigan was?
Well, they were just like, you do this for the living. Weird question. Do you know who Seth Hennigan? And I was like, yeah, sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Could tell you everything about him.
Yeah. So that was another item on my list. Continue.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, you mentioned, I'm surprised that you did not mention when you talk about crazy individual stats. Harold Fannin, baby.
17 catches.
17 catches, 213 yards. The star. I don't even want to pigeonhole him in by calling him a tight end. He's just a pass catcher. He is an offensive force for Bowling Green. Bowling Green lost the 68 Ventures Bowl, by the way, but Harold Fannin, 17 for 213 and a score in that game, which was pretty awesome. We had that as one of our bowl bingo items. I think we had it listed at like 8 catches for Harold Fannin. He went over that like immediately.
Smashed.
So,
yep.
Yeah. That was definitely a theme for me as well, just seeing some of these stat lines. Obviously, the big thing that I think we talk about nowadays is significance of these bowl games. A, because of transfer. B, because of opt-outs and that culture. It's kind of its own thing. And now C, as it relates to the college football playoff. And I'm just curious to kind of get your thoughts now that these games have been played. My initial impression when I saw these matchups was these games are going to pale in comparison just in terms of meaning and stakes and generally how much people care.
Right.
Because there are these other so-called bigger games going on. And to my surprise, I think it was some of the ESPN PR people tweeting out that they actually saw a little bit more interest in bowl season. And I just wonder if that's because of the matchups. I wonder if that's because of the calendar. I wonder if that's because the playoff kept people interested longer.
Right.
I think there was an entire New York Times article about this that I haven't had a chance to read yet, but I've seen this in a couple places, and I kind of find that a bit surprising. It's not a bad thing.
Right.
You know, obviously we're in the business of college football. We want people to care, but I find it surprising to me that amid all of this change that the interest in bowl season was actually up as compared to previous years.
I have a theory, and I have no evidence. I mean, this is nothing new for me, right? I have a theory without any evidence, without talking to anybody who might know better. It is just a theory. My theory is that every time we expand the playoff, every time we have a conversation about like, oh, should these seeds get buys and winning a conference, and you didn't make the playoff, this guy's transferring, this coach is leaving, there's a seriousness to that conversation within the sport. There's a weight to that. And when you go to bowl season, even if a player is opting out, even if a coach leaves and isn't there, right? Barry Odom leaves UNLV to go to Purdue. There's an interim situation. Obviously, UNLV is a unique case. They lose their starting quarterback 3 games into the season. Their best receiver opts out. Like, they make a coaching change. They're playing against a power conference team in, I believe, Cal, and win that game. I want to say there's like a lightness to where the Bulls are right now. That like, no, It's not the most important thing, but you're home with your family. Maybe you like some members of your family. Maybe you don't, and you don't want to talk to them. What do? Turn on the 68 Ventures Bowl and just like zone out as 2 random teams go to septuple overtime. And I think there's a lightness to the, like, they're available. They're there for you, right? In bowl season, in holiday season, whatever. And I don't know why that would make more people watch it, but it does. Like, if a common complaint, a rising complaint about the sport is like, it's all about the money, it's all, realignment and NIL and the playoff, and coaches are leaving for more money, players are leaving for more money. They're like, I'm just gonna watch the Cheez-It Bowl and just like be absent from that narrative.
Cheez-It Bowl,
right?
Let's go.
Like, let's just watch Shane Beamer and Bret Bielema yell at each other. Like, that has, like, the game doesn't necessarily have stakes, and maybe you can use it as like, here's the referendum on the SEC, and I can argue with people online because South Carolina couldn't really move the ball or finish drives against Illinois, who got 10 wins. But you're just like, it's a nice little pocket of just like, let's watch some weird football for 3 hours, and whatever happens, but it's not at all something that means anything for the next year. But as a self-contained bit of entertainment, you can do a lot worse. I don't know if you watch, like, you want to watch that, or are you going to watch Dr. Odyssey on ABC? Like, come on, it's a no-brainer.
Well, and there is definitely a little bit of George Costanza, why are people watching? Because it's on TV.
Yeah, of course.
Right. That's definitely always been a thing this time of year, as people are kind of out and about with their families, maybe seeking a distraction from wherever they're at in the world.
Yeah.
But also, I do think the playoff, and I just know from looking at, I've said this 1,000 times now, but our numbers, and which usually are a pretty good barometer for just general fan interest in sport at any given time, the numbers in December were way up. Way the hell up. And I suspect that a number of people listening to us didn't give a rip about the playoff or any of the teams in it. But just the fact that there was this new novel thing kept people's interest. It made them stick around a little bit longer before they tuned college football out. And, maybe as a result, bowl season was just right there.
Yeah.
Right there. And I don't know if maybe that's the reason why there was some added interest this year. We could have a million theories.
Yeah, I have no idea.
I don't think you're wrong, though, about sports as a whole. It's not college football. It's just sports in general. People watch sports because they enjoy the sport of it.
Right.
And you and I aren't used to. We hate talking about these like deep administrative topics about the structure and the sustainability of the thing. It's like, we just like football, right? We're football fans at the end of the day. That's what people, I think, overwhelmingly are. And yeah, if the bowl games offered something of a retreat, whatever the word is, from that, reprieve from that sort of conversation, then maybe that's got something to do with it. By the way, I should add this, since you mentioned UNLV. Did you happen to take a look at the second half of this one?
Somewhat, yeah. What is it? What are the drives? I don't have it in front of me.
Punt, fumble, TD, punt, field goal, fumble, punt, downs. End of game.
I can't believe you found that clip, Ty.
I have it. I have the clip. You sent it to me a while ago.
Yeah, great. Like, even as long as it's not a 6-3 game, as long as it's not 9-6, as long as it's not 12-10, like BYU played defense, TCU played defense. Weirdly enough, it was the Big 12 that in some bigger bowl games were leading the way. That was the Alamo Bowl that BYU kind of immediately ran away, offense and special teams, from Colorado. That was like, okay, great. It didn't happen a lot. We didn't get a ton of defense, but I like the variety of it all. Great.
So why don't we start here specifically with some of the storylines that came out of bowl season? You know, we've been talking about this bigger picture, themes, what have you. There were a couple, I think, bigger stories that came out of this. And the first was the SEC thing.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned South Carolina losing to Illinois. That happened on the same day that Alabama lost to Michigan. It was a weird 1-2 punch, especially given the context of this ongoing SEC playoff argument that we have been witness to over the last month or so. I could not help myself, and we've talked about this on streams, immediately after the Alabama loss. I mean, no disrespect to the Alabama community, I promise you. I could not resist.
If you have to say it,
I know.
Then maybe you do mean some disrespect.
I mean, it wasn't good fun to just tweet out that it just means 9-4.
Yeah.
This is what we mentioned on one of our streams, which rankled a former listener saying the show used to be good. What happened to you guys? Let me say a couple things about this.
Okay, floor is yours.
Inconceivable to me that Alabama would lose this game, given all Michigan's limitations, even given the fact that it's bowl season.
Yeah.
I still cannot get this through my head. It is not more inconceivable than Ohio State losing at full strength at the end of the season to Michigan. That one I do not get. I will never understand that. You can explain it to me a million times. That one to me still does not make any sense. But however Michigan was able to do this with smoke and mirrors and ugly football and apparently a quarterback with a torn ACL, I think it's a successful campaign for Sharon Moore in year one.
Wait, who had a torn ACL?
Davis Warren.
Did he really?
Davis Warren.
In that game he suffered it. Yeah. I thought he was like playing the season like Curtis Rourke or something. Okay, continue.
No. My bad if I implied that.
No, you're good.
But so Michigan has had to deal with a lot of slop this year, a lot of turnover, both in terms of personnel, a lot of confusion with what's going on with the NCAA. There was a lot that Sharon Moore had to deal with. And again, wasn't the prettiest brand of football, but to get to where they got, to cap things off by beating Alabama, I give him a lot of credit, and I don't think that should be overshadowed. Secondly, on the Alabama side of things, I mean, we can make the jokes about the SEC all we want.
Yeah.
I think that next season's version of Alabama is going to look a lot different.
Okay.
Not the least of which is because Jalen Milroe has decided he's going pro.
Ryan Grubb's on the market. I don't know if you saw that.
Ryan Grubb's on the market.
Offensive coordinator at Washington, yeah.
I have that jotted down. I got to believe he's the first call. If they're looking to revamp the offense, that they're going to go back to Ryan Grubb. I think Kalen DeBoer is too good of a coach for this type of situation to happen again.
Okay.
So I'm really curious, kind of on the heels of this, about what happens to Alabama next. What does this next iteration of Alabama look like? Because there are going to be changes, and I absolutely believe that Kalen DeBoer knows what he's doing out there. It's just, again, a big transition to go from Nick Saban to anybody.
Right.
Had a bunch of transfers that he was dealing with. Clearly still a ton of talent on hand, but suffice to say, it's a big deal when you come in there and you have to try and reboot things so quickly. So I'm very curious to see which direction both of those programs go now.
The number 2 recruiting class in the class of 2025 in this moment.
That's right.
Not huge, but obviously high level.
Absolutely. So there's that on the SEC and Big Ten side, and then the whole South Carolina-Illinois thing. I admittedly did not see a whole lot of the South Carolina-Illinois game. I know that was one of the talking points that people kept bringing up, just as sort of like a kicker to the whole Alabama loss.
Mm-hmm.
How did Illinois beat South Carolina again? Like, what happened in
South Carolina just wasn't finishing drives. Lenore Sellers wasn't getting loose on the ground. They weren't hitting that much downfield. Illinois just leaned on Josh McCray. It wasn't even like a time of possession thing. And Josh McCray put an exclamation on the win in the I don't even, what bowl was it? Illinois, South Carolina.
Illinois, South Carolina played in the.
It all runs together at a certain point.
I'll pull it up.
Yeah. But that was I want to say that was on New Year's Eve, in the evening of
Correct.
New Year's Eve. That
Cheez-It
Illinois
Bowl, by the way.
It was the
Cheez-It Bowl.
Cheez-It Bowl.
Yeah.
And that was without Pat Bryant for Illinois, who I believe opted out, so their big offensive weapon. And this wasn't a great Illinois offensive line this year, but it was largely just sort of Illinois more often. And both of these teams were good on third down, but it was a fun back and forth. The argument stemmed from Bret Bielema sort of taunting Shane Beamer when he was out to help with an injury because South Carolina players, they didn't call for a fair catch on a kickoff, but they like extended their arms as what you usually do when you're going to let the ball go.
Right.
For a
So hold
touchback.
on. Pause right there.
Sorry, continue.
No. This was the story actually that came out of this one.
Yeah.
It wasn't so much Illinois winning. It was, we almost had a fight or we had an argument between Shane Beamer. If you saw some of the clips of it, he was heated.
Hold me back. Yeah.
So explain again what led to this kind of altercation.
So as far as I can tell, it was Bret Bielema coming out onto the field to check on an injured player when Illinois was on defense, and the injury happened around the South Carolina bench, and so there was just like a gathering of South Carolina people, coaches and players and stuff nearby, and Bret Bielema taunted with a referee's signal what basically the players were doing, which was holding out their arms to indicate that they weren't going to catch a kickoff, and then caught the kickoff and tried to do a trick kickoff return play.
Okay.
And so Bret Bielema thought it was Bush League. He taunted Shane Beamer. Shane Beamer, after the fact, said he cleared the move with, I think it was a Big 12 officiating crew, and Bret Bielema started cracking up as Shane Beamer had to be held back and was yelling across the field. And a lot of energy here. And at the end of the day, Illinois wins 10 this year.
Yeah, 21-17, they get the better of South Carolina. So that was definitely the story.
Yeah.
The other big one that I think has risen to the surface, and we haven't had a chance to talk about this, so I'm glad it's coming up. Iowa State wins the Pop-Tarts Bowl. Okay, good on Iowa State.
Yes.
First time in program history that they got 11 wins. I believe the first time in program history that they finished with more than 9 wins in a season. Close game, 42-41 final. The story in this one, though, had nothing to do with that. The story was Cam Ward, Miami quarterback Cam Ward, soon to be high first-round pick Cam Ward.
Seems that way.
Played in this one for a half. He played in it for one half. He came in long enough to set the career record for passing touchdowns.
Like Division I.
In Division I.
Yeah.
Previously held by Case Keenum.
Not FBS, to be clear. It was Division I.
Division I.
Which is, a lot of them were at Incarnate Word. Yeah.
That's correct.
Word.
Division I, gets the passing touchdown record, 156 for his career, which is a crazy amount. Opts out at halftime. Yeah. Now, Jacoby George also did the same thing. He wasn't alone. But there was, I think, a fair amount of online chatter about, wow, what does this mean? How should we feel about Cam Ward? Does this
It's going to be the first question that an NFL GM is going to ask Cam Ward. Are they going to say, is this guy a competitor? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. My first thought upon seeing this was, I can't believe he did that. If it were me, there's no way I would do that.
Yeah.
I would not be able to go back into the locker room and come out at halftime, see my team losing, and be cool with that.
Yeah, not injured by any account.
Not injured.
Mario Cristobal didn't give details about it. He was just like, we're just going to keep that inside. Blah, blah, blah.
Right. So that was that, but that's like speaking on a very, very personal level, how I would treat it.
Yeah.
I am not anywhere near as athletic and skilled in this football game.
Totally disagree.
As Cam Ward. So I think my revised feeling on the matter is, especially now in this era of opt-outs and everybody kind of watching out for themselves, especially in these exhibition bowl games, I think I have made peace with this. Okay. It's definitely a bit of a different approach, but if everybody else is opting out anyway, what difference does it make if you play half the game or part of the game or none of the game? An opt-out's an opt-out's an opt-out. It all kind of sucks.
Yeah. And look, we don't sort of hand wring anymore when Ricky White or Luther Burden or Pat Bryant or any of these guys opt out. We're just like, hey man, thanks for all the entertainment and good times watching your team. Christian McCaffrey opted out. Like a lot of huge names have done it.
Saquon
Barkley. I think this I will put in the like two things can be true thing. Like you're just like, yeah, you sort of get it that it's not actually going to be a big deal for his NFL prospects. Like the scouts and GMs and whoever coaches are just going to care about like what can Cam Ward do for my team and what is his ceiling as a potential NFL starting quarterback. But at the same time, it's kind of weird. We're not going to like lose our minds. We're not going to say like what is going on with the youth these days. But you'd be like, it's a little bit corny to like start playing a game and then decide you're done playing the game.
It's different. It is definitely different. And I'm not going to act like I'm completely comfortable with it. I think I've just made peace with it.
You're just like, hey man, like you see like the Miami fans digging in on one side, you see like the moralizing fans on the other side. You're just like, I don't know. Can we all just agree that like it's unusual and a little bit different and weird for a player to be like, yeah, I'm good. 2 quarters is plenty.
Yeah.
Like I get setting a record might be important to you, but like I don't know if anybody's going to remember that Cam Ward set this record in 3 weeks. And so maybe he will and his family will, and that's great and cool by them. It is a little bit corny, Ty. It is a little bit corny.
Listen, I get I completely get it. It's different.
Like
it's different. We haven't seen this version of opt-outs all that often.
To go through like stretching and game planning, and there were a couple of plays which I actually admire where he just went fully casual dress, flat feet. Like his offensive line was protecting him to such a crazy degree against the Iowa State pass rush. He was like, okay, let's all just take a beat here and figure out who's open. Okay, you're open. Corny and weird, but I don't know. I hope he makes $700 million in the NFL and has a long, successful, happy life.
Shout out to the best of all Roccos, by the way, was the Pop-Tarts Bowl MVP.
Yes.
And had a hell of a game here. The Pop-Tarts did it up right. The pomp and circumstance around this game is second to none.
I agree.
Tremendous. Absolutely tremendous. They do a fabulous job. I hope more bowl games take their advice.
Consume the mascots and have a mascot rip off their outer shell with the giant foil packaging. It was great.
I'll tell you what got me about the Pop-Tarts Bowl.
Okay.
It wasn't the toasted edible mascot. It wasn't all of the buildup around it.
Mm-hmm.
It was the fact that somebody in the marketing department had the foresight to put together an in memoriam for what was the strawberry, whichever one got eaten last year. They had an in memoriam video that they rolled on the Jumbotron.
Yeah.
That clearly had some production value. And they just kept going. I mean, they really steered into making this like its own universe. I loved it. I loved every second of it.
The only thing that gives me pause about the Pop-Tarts Bowl is concern for the creative people behind the scenes that like, you can't take a step back next year.
No, you got to keep
You got to keep adding and keep going bigger. Right. And so it's going to be more expensive. It's going to be more violent. The imagery is going to be more in your face, all in good ways. But there's a little bit of the like, you remember the David Copperfield specials from the 90s where it's like, he's going to make the Statue of Liberty disappear. And then he does. And then the next year he's got to be like, he's going to make Earth disappear. We're just like what is David Blaine, who also was doing that kind of stuff, going to, like, what was David Blaine doing? He was like suspending himself over Times Square. He was sticking needles through his skin. Like at a certain point, you're going to reach a ceiling of what's possible creatively. Or you know what? Take that as a challenge, Pop-Tarts people. Maybe there is no ceiling.
This is what happened with recruiting announcement ceremonies. You hit the upper limit.
You hit the David Blaine eats an armored car. Okay, ABC, you have my attention. But yeah, that's the only potential issue down the line. Like what I saw Cole Kubelik in the Pop-Tarts costume. Yeah. He looked great. Everything was good.
BYU hammered Colorado in the Alamo Bowl. You mentioned this earlier. 36-14. They led 20-0 at half. I was really excited for this game.
Yeah.
I was excited for this game. This was a matchup, pretty much a full boat on both sides, right? Everybody had their guys playing in this one. This game was hot garbage, Dan.
Yeah.
It was hot garbage. Credit to BYU for shutting down Colorado. And I would say with all due respect to our loyal Colorado contingent out there that watches and listens, Colorado might have been the 1-2-3 Cancun team of bowl season.
Sure.
There were pretty good chunks of this game, especially in the first quarter, where I was like, are they going somewhere after this?
Yeah.
Are they going somewhere after this? Are
Yeah.
they going to miss their flight if this game runs too long? I was not getting the vibes that they were really into all this.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think just BYU was better. BYU had a very good season. They won a bunch of games when they weren't expected to win as many as they won. They were right on the edge of going to the Big 12 championship game, which obviously Colorado was as well. And BYU was good. They took this game very seriously. It seemed like Colorado was through the motions a little bit more. I don't necessarily think that's commentary on how they built their team, which I've seen out there that like Colorado is strictly a transactional. It's not like you don't win games.
And I'm not implying as much.
I know,
but
and neither am I.
And we see this all the time with really good, even veteran teams that go to
teams
bowl
come out
season.
flat.
You go like, we're good.
Yeah.
I just this was not giving me any kind of inspiration on the Colorado side.
Sometimes you just get your ass kicked, and Colorado did. That's okay.
Speaking of ass kickings,
yeah.
Let's talk about the fight, baby.
ECU, NC State.
So in our bowl bingo game, we set an over-under of 1.5 for unsportsmanlike conduct penalties that would be called in the military bowl.
Yes.
This is because NC State and ECU are like, it's an actual rivalry.
They're this was a great call by you.
And we got one unsportsmanlike conduct penalty.
Mm-hmm.
You would have thought we would have had more given the way this game ended in the final 30 seconds. ECU ends up winning 26-21. There was one unsportsmanlike conduct penalty up to that point. What we did not anticipate was a bench clearing brawl.
Right.
I didn't want to go there with it. I didn't want to be a downer, even though it's kind of funny now in retrospect.
And they play next year, right?
They play next year, yeah. I didn't want to go to the bench clearing brawl thing, although the idea of fisticuffs definitely crossed my mind when I was putting this card together.
Mm-hmm.
But it happens at the end. Long story short, it appeared to me NC State defender kind of jumps on and was a little too rough on an ECU player when he didn't have to be. This triggers like a whole thing. Before you know it, there's like a ref who gets bloodied up. Players get ejected. There was not another unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. I was hoping that we would get another one so that somebody could hit the over on this, but we didn't. I checked the official game log. There was only one. 26-21 caps off kind of a disappointing year for NC State.
Yeah, I would say so.
Nice.
Look, there were higher highs given the start than perhaps like CJ Bailey is absolutely a bright spot for years to come, hopefully for NC State. Yeah.
Yeah. So there was that. There was the fight. What other things stood out to you?
I mean, ECU just ran all over them.
Yeah.
It was the NC State run defense. It was ECU smashing them on the ground, going to the run in big moments, and like I think 3rd and 4th and long. That was the difference in this game to me.
Random factoid for you, Dan Rubenstein.
I'm ready.
There was one bowl game. One. This entire bowl season, this includes the playoffs. One game that was between two conference champions.
One game between two conference champions.
One game. One game featured two conference champions. You're not going to get this.
It wasn't Jacksonville State, and who did Jacksonville State play?
No, it was. It was the Cure Bowl between Jacksonville State and Ohio.
Oh, I was thinking they played Georgetown. You're right. Absolutely. Ohio minus Tim Albin and Jacksonville State minus Rich Rod.
That's right. That's right. So 2 coaching void situations. Parker Navarro ran for 3 touchdowns, threw for a 4th by halftime. Ohio was up big, like 27-7.
Yes.
And then they blew it, or almost blew it.
Yeah.
They end up winning 30-27. They covered the spread, which I think was 1.5. And it ended up being kind of an interesting game. Second half, Jacksonville State came on like a freight train. So there was that.
Mm-hmm.
Congrats go out to both James Madison and Sam Houston.
First bowl wins.
Yeah, each of them got their first bowl win. JMU beat Western Kentucky in the Boca Bowl. By the way, they need to call it the Boca Bowl and not Boca Raton Bowl.
I like that.
It's called Boca. The Boca Bowl, 27-17. Sam Houston was the one that beat Georgia Southern. And they did so in the New Orleans Bowl. So both those programs get their first wins.
And that's Sam Houston, by the way.
First bowl wins as FBS teams.
First bowl wins as FBS team. Sam Houston did it without Casey Keeler, who's the new Temple coach. Right. If you're listening to this show, Casey Keeler, Angelo's in South Philly.
Oh,
that's the move.
That is the move.
Yeah.
How about Florida, baby? Woo!
Not a great opening stance for DJ Lagway, I would say.
They started with a 6-0 halftime lead.
Yeah.
And then in the second half, they came on a lot stronger. You saw the flashes, like kind of the highs and the lows of DJ Lagway.
Yes.
The highs were undeniable. Some of the lows were not so good. He had 2 picks, but he went over 300 yards. He had a touchdown. In the end, they end up outgaining Tulane 529-194. They finished the year with 8 wins, won 5 of their last 7.
Something like that. Yeah. They got blown out without DJ Lagway at Texas, but yeah.
So I think all things considered, with where Billy Napier started the season, to finish with 8 wins with the bowl win here is a pretty good accomplishment for him. He's coming back next year. Obviously, they've been doing a lot of work recruiting and otherwise. So
there's good young receivers. Dallas Wilson, who was signed with Oregon, but from, I think, the Tampa area, is 5-star receiver coming in for Florida. They added J. Michael Sturdivant, I believe, UCLA or Cal. Yeah, UCLA was at Cal before that, so he shores up receiver as well for Florida. Lost some, I think, a couple key dudes on defense to the portal, but all things considered, that Florida got through this year and ends up with the bowl 8 wins, punched a little bit above where we thought they might be earlier on in the year.
Yeah. Did you see the crazy line movement before the Oklahoma-Navy game?
I did not.
You happen to take note of this?
No.
So this one was like Oklahoma -10 when they announced the matchup. And then gradually over the course of a couple of weeks, it just kept coming down and down and down and down and down. And then eventually, before kickoff, I looked right before kickoff, it was Oklahoma +1. That line moved that much.
Wow.
Navy ends up winning by exactly 1 point. I have no idea how this is possible in this universe, that these point spreads can get that damn close.
Yeah.
21-20. Navy ends up winning. It was not without drama, though, so Oklahoma mounts a 13-play drive with about 1:40 left. They score on a touchdown pass.
Really nice play. Wide open, yeah.
6 seconds left. They go for 2. They don't get it.
Sack.
That is how Navy ends up winning. Took a sack.
Michael Hawkins,
correct.
Yeah.
Michael Hawkins Jr. takes a sack. Oklahoma ends up with the loss. They finish the year 6-7 with a loss to Navy. So good win for Navy. Bad loss for Oklahoma. This is not something that's going to inspire a whole lot of confidence now going into the offseason.
Well, we're going into the John Mateer era, Ty.
We'll see. I don't know. So there was that.
But by the way, Navy, man. How about Navy's year? Brian Newberry they got to double-digit wins, yes?
They did.
Blake Horvath with a 95-yard touchdown run, a Navy record straight up the gut. Now, we're talking about an Oklahoma team. Absolutely struggled on offense, has made changes to the offensive coaching staff. Lost their, I think, defensive coordinator as well to West Virginia and Rich Rod, I believe.
Right.
And so certainly changes for Oklahoma on the sideline, and hopefully the offense with John Mateer and receiver health and portal help and offensive line health is a lot more competitive in the SEC, but
they've still recruited at a really high level.
And they have been for the past couple of years, but we just need to see it, see the players stay healthy, see the portal additions work out, both coming in and leaving. I'm going to choose to use this as positive Navy spin, that after a couple down years for Navy, both Navy and Army, and Navy beat Army, finished strong.
Army hammered La Tech.
Yes, they did. And they don't like being called La Tech, but what are you going to do?
Louisiana Tech,
I know.
Excuse me. They didn't have much choice in this game. They just found out like 4 hours before the game that they were going to play it because Marshall, the entire team opted out of playing in the bowl.
Yeah.
Louisiana Tech gets the invite. It is not enough notice. It's kind of never enough notice to play an option team, especially a team like an Army or a Navy, one of these service academies. They don't have to deal with transfers for the most part. It's always going to be a full boat. They ran for 321 in the Independence Bowl. So
right.
Good on Army.
I'm almost positive, though, Army lost a running back to ASU. Army had a running back. Right. One of the running backs transferred to Arizona State, and this is not my thought because I just happened to see it online. Could you think of a more dramatic environmental change?
No.
Than West Point to Tempe? It's great. No. Experiencing the full spectrum of what college towns have to offer and college football experiences have to offer, and it's Kanye Udo, I apologize if I pronounced that wrong, is the running back in question here. So, yes, it doesn't happen all that often, but sometimes.
It does not. We had a random shootout in the Rate Bowl between K-State and Rutgers.
Yes.
A comeback from K-State. They needed to come back from a 34-17 deficit in like the final quarter and a half.
A Dylan Edwards game in relief of DJ Giddens. Yeah.
Yes, DJ Giddens was out, opting out for the NFL draft. Gila Monster Kyle Monangai was also out on the Rutgers side, preparing for the NFL draft. Rutgers had that lead, but big game for Avery Johnson, big game for Dylan Edwards, who had transferred over before the season from Colorado. They end up winning this one by a 44-41 final. That was a shootout. We also had another shootout in the Vegas Bowl. This one wasn't quite as unexpected, but still I think had a more interesting result than maybe we thought going in. USC and Texas A&M.
Yeah.
843 total yards. USC won 35-31. We joked around on the bingo card that USC was going to blow a fourth quarter lead.
Sure.
We actually put that on the bingo card.
And yet they had a fourth quarter comeback.
They had a fourth quarter comeback.
Yeah.
They were down 24-7 at one point, I guess, in the second quarter. And they needed some heroics in the very end from Jaden Mayava. Led them on a 10-play, 75-yard drive with about a minute and a half left to get the game-winning score. So USC with a big bowl win in the Vegas Bowl over Texas A&M. That was nice.
I appreciate Jaden Mayava's commitment to stuff. I appreciate that. Like, sometimes you see it with NBA players sometimes where you're like, I don't know if this player's good, but they had 3 steals and 2 blocks and 4 tip passes and they were 3 for 3 from 3. And like, they just stuff a stat box. Yeah. Jaden Mayava, and I love that this was in Vegas because it just, it brings this home even more. He's a quarterback buffet, right? You want some crab legs? You want some tiramisu on your plate? Jaden Mayava is going to bring it all. 4 touchdown throws, 3 picks. He's going to make some super horrific decisions. Sometimes it'll work out, sometimes it won't, but he's here to stuff that plate full of crab claws and tiramisu.
King crab legs, baby. Yeah. That's what he's got.
That's in a good way, because that crab legs have not always been associated in a good way with quarterbacks in college football. But Jaden Mayava, I mean this as a compliment. Thank you for bringing action to any college football game you play in.
We had, speaking of food, a nice little pan searing.
Okay.
By LSU of Baylor in the Texas Bowl. Like, very quick lead, 34-17 at halftime. Got that nice thick outer crust. And then in the second half, they fumbled and threw a pick on their next 2 drives.
Yes.
Got a little bit closer. This one was never really in doubt. It was never really that close. They end up cruising to victory here. But LSU with the bowl win. That was one of those games that you and I talked a lot about in the buildup, because I think it was either LSU or even Baylor -1. It was a low point spread.
Mm-hmm.
And in reality, it just ended up being all LSU.
LSU, another like stat stuffer this year, just in terms of the types of games they were playing, and a little gumpy this year. That like, they're involved with a USC narrative. Oh, they're involved with a UCLA narrative. Oh, they're involved with like a South Carolina crazy back and forth, and Lenora Sellers gets hurt, and it's Robbie Ashford. Like, they're involved with an Ole Miss game that goes crazy. Like, it wasn't always pretty, but LSU was in the thick of conversation, which is good.
Ole Miss hung. You mentioned Ole Miss. They hung 52 on Duke in their bowl game. Jackson Dart had a huge game. He played.
Yes.
400 passing, around 450 total yardage. He is going pro.
Yeah.
I am extremely curious to see what the draft Knicks think about Jackson Dart. I really like Jackson Dart.
Yeah.
I think Jackson Dart is, at worst, the 3rd quarterback off the board.
Really? This is not my area of, I don't pay attention to it at all. Who are the top names right now?
The top names are Shador and Cam Ward.
Okay.
And then after that, you've got guys like Carson Beck coming off injury. He's not going to be that high of a draft pick.
No.
Possibly a guy like a Quinn Ewers coming out. We have to wait and see. I mean, there are all sorts of rumors floating around about him right now. It's just not that loaded.
Jalen Milroe, Alabama. Ewers, Will Howard, Tyler Shuck, Curtis Rourke with the injuries.
Someone's going to pick Kyle McCord. I I don't feel particularly confident about a guy like a Riley Leonard. He could be interesting, but if you look up and down, Jackson Dart's got room to grow on this list right here. And I think especially since there are some real questions about Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders at the very top and how their games translate to the NFL, not so much knocking those guys, but I think Jackson Dart's going to be in that conversation come, 4 months from now.
I don't think I realized how shallow this class was.
Yeah.
Why didn't Drew Aller declare? What are you doing, dude? Get overpaid.
Yep.
Be the number 14 pick. Okay.
We'll see. So anyway, Jackson Dart had a good game, kind of kicking things off right in his pursuit of the NFL. Ole Miss with a very, very big win. Lane Kiffin still has not stopped tweeting, by the way.
Great.
He's still going to town.
Tweet through
on his stuff here. What else do we got? Did you watch the Pinstripe Bowl?
I did.
This game was unwatchable. This is an unwatchable football game. This was Nebraska. This was Boston College. It was Nebraska's first bowl win since 2015 in the vaunted Foster Farms Bowl, Dan. We all remember the Foster Farms Bowl.
Of course. That's what, San Francisco or Santa Clara, wherever, somewhere up there?
Santa Clara.
Yeah.
That's right. I watched this one up at Mama H's.
Okay.
It was a pure mud bowl. We switched over to the Lincoln Lawyer on Netflix.
Good show?
Through the first. I mean, it's fine. Yeah. I enjoy it. I'm not that critical of my TV. So as long as you keep me mildly entertained, I'm in.
Okay. I mean, that's basically what it says on the charter of the Solid Verbal. Let's just keep people mildly entertained.
That's right. I practice what I preach. I watched the Lincoln Lawyer. It's fine. I enjoyed it.
Pinstripe Bowl was tough, though I will say, Ramir Johnson, good story. Lost his mother this year, was the MVP in this game, is from New York. So that is a cool story for Nebraska football, as they themselves, we'll see, active in the portal once again. Lost their defensive coordinator, Florida State, Tony White.
Yep.
So, there'll be changes, but I anticipate 2025 for Nebraska. You can write this down. It's going to be another Matt Rule type year for Nebraska. Like, they can go 11-1 with the number 104 offense. Like, it's just going to be a Matt Rule year. That's, you hire Matt Rule, you get Matt Rule. So that's where we are.
I have here about PJ Fleck getting the Mayo dumped on him, the Mayo bath.
Enthusiastically, by the way.
There is nobody in college football. I shouldn't say nobody. He is one of a select few in college football that was built to have that Mayo bath.
I mean, literally, like the clean, smooth nature of his skull. It's pouring mayo down a water slide. It was great.
Now, what I do want to... Minnesota wins its 8th straight bowl game. PJ won his 6th straight bowl game.
Yeah.
Took them a while to get warmed up in this one, but then pretty much put it on ice with a big second quarter.
Yeah.
It was against a Virginia Tech team that was pretty hollowed out. They had 14 new starters playing in this one. I don't know what direction Virginia Tech's headed. We're going to have to talk about that in the offseason.
Yeah.
But, really nice showing from Minnesota in the very end. My only question about PJ with the Mayo bath, you're right. Very aerodynamic, right? With the hair situation. I want to know what it was like trying to peel that pullover off afterwards.
Well, I mean, is mayo a natural lubricant?
I've never been in that amount of.
Well, like you hear like when like a kid gets their arm stuck in a crib, right? You go butter, you got to slick it up, or soap or something like that. I would imagine. I mean, mayo's what? It's whipped egg whites. I would imagine
it does stick though. There is a sticky quality to it.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine after an entire game of probably sweating in that thing. He's always wearing it a size and a half too small. You know this about PJ Fleck. That's just kind of his brand. So to dump mayo on top of that, he needed a shoehorn to get that thing off afterwards. I would like to know more about that process and what that was like for him in the locker room.
Did you see that there was a mystery celebrity mascot involved in the Duke's Mayo Bowl? And there was like, there were media members tweeting out, they're like, hey, there's buzz that this mascot is a full-on performer, famous person. And that was a good tease to see who the mascot was. It turned out to be Flava Flav, I want to say.
Flava Flav, yeah.
Was the Mayo Bowl mascot. But in my head, I was just like, okay, let's narrow. There's a cross-section where like you need to be famous enough for there to be buzz. But you need to be perhaps not as famous as you used to be to accept the job to be a mayonnaise mascot in Charlotte, North Carolina. I was trying to figure out who fit that perfectly. And
Ken Jeong. That's Ken Jeong written all over it.
Ken Jeong is a very good guess.
And he's already on that Masked Singer show,
right.
isn't he?
So it's sort of a cousin of the Masked Singer. In my head, I went with Jaleel White as.
Oh wow, I haven't heard that name in.
But the problem, of
15
course,
years.
is I maybe I just saw him on Instagram or something like that. I was like, that would be a really good to get the man formerly known as Steve Urkel or Stefan Urkel, depending on your vantage point, to be the Mayo Bowl mascot. But it was not. I mean, it has, sports experience. Was a good basketball player. So Flava Flav fits that perfectly as well. So good choice by them. And you know what? It was PJ Fleck was very excited to have Flava Flav in his life. Great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, this was perfect for PJ.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he represented the spirit of the Mayo Bowl well.
And Minnesota played well. A nice complete win
They did.
to finish off a mostly successful year for Minnesota.
I think I hit all of my talking points here.
Sure.
From the things that I jotted down just through bowl season. Again, this was never intended to be a comprehensive review
Right.
of everything that transpired, just things that we found interesting. Is there anything that you still have on your list?
I mean, Clark Lee and Diego Pavia with a nice win
right.
over Georgia Tech, who, I mean, they were without Eric Singleton didn't play. He transferred to Auburn, good receiver for Georgia Tech. But by and large, another nice win for Vandy, ending the year
5
like
touchdowns
they did.
for Pavia?
Both through the air and on the ground. And at this moment, he'll be back next year, pending on what happens with appeals. I mean, he got to stay, I believe, because he played in junior college to get another year of NIL opportunity in college. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. And excited if we get more Diego Pavia in our life, but also a good year for Georgia Tech, all things considered. Starting out the year beating Florida State, which the tenor of that win changed over the course of the year, but all the same, it's better to win in Ireland than lose. And Haynes King, Jamal Haynes, Haynes King, an impressive year playing through the pain that he had. So I thought that was impressive from Vandy to finish the year with a win. They get to, I think, 7 wins with that one. I'm trying to look at what else I have down here. I think we covered everything else that I want to say. I mean, I mentioned Taylen Green.
Louisville, Washington was kind of a fun game.
Louisville scored 24, only team in America, I think, scored 24 plus points in every game they played this year.
Yeah, Louisville ends up winning by a 35-34 score over Washington. I had Washington plus the 2.5.
I think that was another 2-point conversion for the win situation for Washington.
Yeah, I had Washington plus the 2.5 on that one, and was definitely sweating the ending. But close game, 35-34, as Louisville gets to 9 wins on the season. Sort of a anonymous 9 wins, to say the least. I mean, it was not publicized that much, if only because in some of their bigger games, Louisville, against Notre Dame, some others, SMU, I don't know. I don't know if Louisville was ever really thought to be a serious threat. They were good enough to be in a lot of those games, the SMU game, the Miami game for a while. They end up winning this one here. Tony the Tiger's Sun Bowl out in El Paso.
Lost to 2 playoff teams in SMU and Notre Dame, but beat a playoff team on the road in Clemson.
Oh, there's one other one that I forgot to mention.
What you got?
Music City Bowl. This was the Iowa-Mizzou game.
Yes.
This is a better game than I expected.
I mean, we circled this as one of the better games going in.
Yeah, this was better than expected. Mizzou needed to come back from 10 down to beat Iowa. They ended up winning 27-24. He had some opt-outs here, right? You had Caleb Johnson, who's going pro, the running back for Iowa. By the way, a really good running back crop this year.
Yes.
Luther Burden was out on the Mizzou side. I saw Theo Weiss got hurt. I believe did not play the second half. Missed some portion of this game. Normally it's Iowa winning the war of attrition, but in this case, I guess it was Mizzou getting the better of them again by a 27-24 score in the Music City Bowl.
Mizzou finishes with what record this year?
Missouri finishes with a 10-3 record.
10-3 record.
That's right.
Got shelled in a couple of those losses by Texas A&M and Bama.
That's right.
And it was a Drew Pine element, let's to say the least. But another really successful year. Mizzou had an ideal schedule though to go through the SEC, and didn't work out. But
it's disappointing.
Still in a good place. We'll see what happens. They lost a huge defensive lineman, I want to say, their defensive line recruit freshman from this past year, but I don't know. I feel like the program's in good shape.
It is indeed. All right. I think that's it for now.
Okay.
for sure, let us know your thoughts on anything we missed. solidverbal@gmail.com, as always, is the email address. You can hit us up on social media. We are on all of the platforms. And, of course, if you're listening to this on Thursday, even if you're listening to this on Friday, we will be doing live streams, 2 live streams, one on Thursday night for Penn State Notre Dame, the other on Friday night for Ohio State Texas, provided they play the game Friday night.
Correct.
In Dallas, because there's a winter weather situation going on there in North Texas. Hope everybody stays safe. It looks like it could be bad. Stay tuned to our social channels for any updates on whether or not that's going to go off. But what's the URL again, Dan?
How about stay tuned to like Dallas weather social channels? Don't count on me.
Yeah, don't
to
count.
Keep
No,
you
we're not going to
updated
tweet
on
those.
the NAM. Yeah,
we'll just tell you if we're going to do it or not.
Yeah. Okay.
That's
Fair.
what I'm saying.
Okay.
Are we still going to do smelltieshair.com? Do you want to?
Yeah, of course. Smelltieshair.com. We'll get you where you need to be for these streams.
As always, verballers.com is where you can go to further support and get perks if you want to be part of our Discord server for the remainder of this season. If you want ad-free listening, if you want to play in any of our games, both current and future, a bunch more perks are out there at verballers.com. Hit follow and subscribe if you made it this far. I'm excited for the weekend ahead, Dan. We've got big football games on the horizon. College football, if you're into pro football, that's starting up. It's going to be a good one. Hope everybody
I'm in on the Chargers, Ty. We got Justin Herbert. We got Jim Harbaugh. We got, I don't know, is Derwin James on the Chargers? I think he is. There's a lot of fun players on the Chargers. And no 49ers. I'm going to go with an Oregon Duck here and Justin Herbert. And guess who they're playing, Ty? Do you know who the Chargers are playing?
Are they playing the Texans?
They're playing the Texans. And what did I need in my life? An Oregon quarterback against an Ohio State quarterback. With all the baggage there, we'll see what happens.
All right. Well, everybody stay safe, stay warm out there. We will talk to you all soon. In the meantime, for that guy, Dan Rubenstein, for myself, Ty Hildebrand, thank you again for downloading, for supporting, for playing along at home. Stay solid.
Peace.